You might have noticed when creating a new sequence, let's go ahead and do that now. Go to the bottom of the project panel, new sequence here. It's that there's a lot of different frame rates. There's 24 frames per second, there's 25 frames per second, there's 29.97, there's 30, there's 60, and there's different variations here. And so you might be wondering why that is the case. Well, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about the frames. We know that frames are the pictures that come at you one after another that comprise video. The speed at which you see those frames is referred to as the frame rate. For television standards, it's kind of been the standard in North America, referred to as the NTSC standard, seen here, that we use 29.97 frames per second. So as we click on all of these, you'll see the frame rate 29.97 frames per second. For PAL, which is the standard in Europe and other parts of the world as well, we have a 25 frames per second frame rate. Now, if you're going to create something cinematic, you'll want to use a 24 frames per second frame rate, and this is often referred to as 23.976. You see, film cameras go at a rate of 24 frames per second. Video approximates that at 23.976 frames per second. If you're going to be catching a lot of fast motion with your footage, then it's better to capture it at a higher frame rate rather than 23.976. Sometimes when you're using the film frame rate, things look stuttered, especially if they're moving quickly in the scene. And also, I should point out that a new frame rate is coming into play. It's 50 frames per second for PAL, for high definition video, and 60 frames per second for high definition NTSC video. So you're starting to see that a lot with video games and maybe like live sporting events in HD. The frame rate makes things look really sharp and crisp. Now, I realize that you don't have that much control over this as an editor. For example, if something was shot with 60 frames per second and that's the way the footage is supposed to be, there's not much you can do about that, but it is something you need to be aware of, and it's good to know why you'd want to use these different frame rates.